And we're back. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Founding Lore Fathers. This is Richard, and we have a full show tonight. John and Dan are floating around somewhere in the
I'm
background.
here. This is
Well,
me. I'm
there's
the one.
Dan somewhere, and we've got an interesting show tonight. We're going to be talking about some apocalypse stuff, and John's got some airing of the grievances he wants to get out there for the world. John, how about you go ahead?
I guess this is a public service announcement. Whenever you go into a place, just because you are a customer there, does not mean that you're entitled to just be an absolute asshole. And that's pretty much all I got to say as far as that goes. Like,
No, I agree.
I just don't understand why people come in and they're like, if I don't have the exact specific thing that they're looking for, it's like they treat me like it's my fault that I ruined their entire life.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't have their 7-pound bag of ice.
What do you mean you don't have avocados? How am I supposed to enjoy guacamole? Well, I've got guacamole. You don't understand. You'll never understand. Why, you son of a bitch? Why? Why?
Did I ever tell you that story, Richard?
No, but apparently you just kind of gave away the ending.
The story about that impression we do, the wah. So
No, tell me.
before I moved to Raleigh, I had to move in with these people that of course, when everybody's living impoverished, we stack everybody in there on top of each other.
Yeah.
But I was living with this couple, and the girl, I guess, graduated from UNCW. I had no idea. She had all kinds of UNCW cups in there. I just got out of the shower. I'm in my bedroom. Pretty sure I had my door locked, naked as Jaybird could be. Freaking, I hear her downstairs like, "Where's my cup? My cup! Where's my cup? Why? Why? Why?" And she's like slamming doors and stuff like that. Eventually, she picks the lock to my room. I have to cover my twigs and berries, man, the best I can, it's hard covering everything up anyways. But I'm just like, "Whoa!" And she's like, "You got my cup. That's my cup. You can't use it. Why? Why would you do that? Why?"
Were you dipping your dick in it or something, man? Like what?
I was enjoying some Hawaiian punch.
Hawaiian punch. Just standing there naked and drinking some Hawaiian punch.
And I should have used the cup to cover up, but like, I kind of wondered if she was curious, like, to get a peek at me, because she knew I just got out of the shower, and like I hear like the door getting pulled on and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm naked, and then she picked the lock to get in there to see the cup that I
It
had.
sounded like she was just frantic and she didn't know how to operate without her cup, dude.
No, I just disheveled because of the one cup that she was specifically looking for at that moment. I see you pee, except I wasn't peeing. I see you pee-pees, what she was trying to do, I think. But
Man,
like
customer.
they were unhinged anyways. Like one time my friend left his cell phone in my truck. Only time he had to wait till his daughter went to sleep. So he comes over at 2 a.m. to grab it. They see him pull up to grab it. They get mad at me because he showed up at like late to pick up his cell phone. The next day, to prove to me how I'd broken his trust and how mad he was, he started breaking all the dishes to the house. And he's like, "This is an analogy for how you've broken our trust. Smash, smash." And I'm just like, wow, like all this to make a point.
Dude, were you living with meth heads? I mean,
No,
that's a meth head thing.
that's one of the times I wasn't living with people on drugs. It's like any time in my life that they're like, I try to do the thing that's what you would consider the right thing. It's like the powers of nature come together to be like, we're going to teach you a lesson this time.
I actually have a couple of interesting interactions with the world here lately too. I had to get an alignment done on my car, and there was an old gentleman. I was got old guy to my left, old guy to my right. Old guy to my right gets called up there, and apparently his engine block had busted. He's stuck. I guess he was out of town from Charlotte. So I told him, I was like, hey, man, I live right down the road. I can take you over to Enterprise if you need a ride or something like that. And he's like, oh, man, that'd be great. That'd be great. And then he was kind of like rushing me. I'm like, my car is still back there. It's on, I'm not just sitting here for shits and gigs. Like my car's in the back. And anyways, it was a thing. He seemed like he was understanding, but he ended up just walking back to his hotel, getting an Uber, thanked me for it. But then old guy to the left, he was like, that was awfully nice of you to offer to give that gentleman a ride. I'm like, well, I at least try to pretend like I'm a good person, He goes, oh, well, I help people out like that, except for the riffraff. I'm like, and me, I have a hard time not laughing at shit. And so I thought he was joking, but he had this like dead ass look on his face. I'm like, well, they're the ones with the best stories. And he goes, oh, huh. And then he got up and he moved over a seat.
I don't know. After Dorothy Donovan episode, picking up anybody could be.
Did he, just for out of curiosity, did he use a different word than riffraff?
No, that was his exact
he
word.
was like out there. He was, in his words, he was cutting the malarkey out and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I don't know.
No Molly.
I don't know what an
for him.
old fuckhead like him refers to riffraff or not. I mean, could be somebody with a beanie on for all I fucking know. He's a very judgmental asshole.
Yeah. I hate with older people when you try to open up to them and then like they start taking things to that next level. Like when we had this guy working on our internet or something like that, or no, he's working on our water. I'm watching these videos about economy and stuff, and we get into talking about the government, and then the next thing you know, he's just like, well, it's the Jews that are doing all this. And I'm like, man, why you got to take it down that path, dude?
It's amazing the way people will communicate when they think that you're part of their group.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Drop some barriers there real quick. I know. Bill Burr has a great joke about how, you're at a bar and all of a sudden the guy sitting next to you taps you on the shoulder and looks around and he's about to say something racist. And I think that a lot of us white dudes have been in that situation.
Yeah.
So,
especially at bars.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually going to pause that story right there. I've been invited to some weird shit.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, just stay out of that. But I know you guys talking about people kind of being off their rockers, and I think it was a great pre-show conversation because I think it kind of leads into our topic for tonight, the end of the world.
Oh yes,
it seems like it's coming.
So
I just don't understand how a red cow is the deciding factor in the end of the world.
Heifer! Any of my Rocco's Modern Life friends out there? Heifer!
That's where my mind went. I hadn't seen that show in such a long time.
Do you know what he's talking about? The whole red heifer? So
I only know like 2 minutes of research before the show because I had a different idea what the show. I had a different idea of where the show was going tonight, and John made an executive decision, and I support him on it. we'll just skip over that topic.
Let's not even discuss why we decided to change topic at the last minute. Let's just move forward from here.
Yeah, which is where we're at. So all I know is there is some biblical prophecy about a red cow ending the world. Now,
and he's not even a mad cow.
So basically,
not even a mad cow.
It comes from the book of Numbers in the Bible, and it says that the Israelites they're commanded. That's the word that they use to obtain a red heifer without spot,
perfect,
that has no blemishes, and upon which there has never been a yoke. And basically, they have built this $1.5 billion altar,
big old ramp and everything, perfect, pristine looking,
right there, smack dab in the middle of Israel.
Well, explain about the temple and everything too. Why they're doing this?
Before we get into the Dome of the Rock, I just want to say that here a couple months back, after all these years of just angry middle fingers across the bay at each other
in the Middle East.
Everything just kind of popped off, and there was bombs dropped, and it was all over. You know what I mean? Because we already had this thing going on with Russia and Ukraine. The next thing you know, they're like, Gaza and Israel are back at it again. And for us, we were just like, well, what set this off?
What happened this time?
What happened to like... But basically, what it is this red heifer fits all of the criteria that this 2,000-year-old prophecy talks about.
I want to add real quick that they've been actually looking for this for years and years. And this time, like every time they go like with a fine-tooth comb, literally, and a magnifying glass. They got like a top rabbi that looks over them, makes sure that has never been had a saddle put on it or something like that.
Yeah, never been to work.
Never worked. Has to have not even a single white hair or anything. Nothing. And this time they found 3 of them. And Israel is hiding them right now as we speak off the radar. And because they want to sacrifice them, because in their belief, I'll let John take back over here. I just wanted to add that.
Basically, so there's 2 decoys, and then there's one that...
Are they decals?
It has to be like 2 years and however many days at the time of the sacrifice. And there's only one of them that fits all the criteria. So there's 2 decoys, and then there's one that's the actual cow. And I'm pretty sure they're moving around in like mobile. You ever seen The Dark Knight Rises? You know what I mean? And at the end, when Bane's driving around with all those goons in those trucks trying to hide who has the trigger. Where's
the shell
trigger?
Kind of like what they did with Abraham Lincoln whenever they were trying to get him to the White House. You know, they got him driving like all these different trains and hiding him in certain spots. I wonder if they got a beard, a top hat on.
Oh, man, that'd be awesome.
Abraham cow. That's funny.
When it all comes down to it, I'm not really sure about the entire ritual. It's like they have to take the cow
and kosher
sacrifice it and burn it with all its excrement, to take the ashes and do something with the ashes so they can purify the guy, so the guy can tear down the thing, so the other guy can do the thing, and he can anoint everybody. It's like really annoying.
So they're trying to build the temple of Israel, or Jerusalem, I'm sorry, because they believe the Messiah is going to come back. And the problem with that is there's already like the 3rd most important Muslim building,
the Dome of the Rock,
is already on this property. And they want to destroy it and build the Temple of Jerusalem because they say that's when the Messiah is going to come back. Now, this red heifer story is one of the only things where all 3 of the religions, the Christians, all the Abrahamic religions, they all agree upon this red heifer sacrifice. That's why it's so important. But the Muslims are upset because they want to destroy it's
like the most sacred thing for all of the Islam faith.
And if this gets destroyed, it's no longer going to be Muslim extremists that are causing all these terrorist acts. It's going to be the whole shebang.
Well, I just want to just be clear here.
Hypothetically,
yes.
Yeah, these are, when you say there are extremists on all sides with this situation.
Oh yeah,
but it's not like every Muslim in America is just going to start murdering motherfuckers. Like, I mean, there are perfectly sane practitioners of the religion. I just want to make sure that we're not crossing a line.
I think everybody kind of understands that at this point. Like, but that is going to be a trigger point in their belief that if they destroy this, it's going to cause a lot of stuff to pop off.
And that's kind of like, this is what started their initial fight to begin with here recently, is like
the October 7th.
Yeah. Israel's like, we're going to do it. And they're like, oh, no, you're not going to do it. And they're like, oh, we're going to do it.
Balls.
We're going to do it. Yeah. But the best part of all this is the actual, okay, so this is all leading up to Passover. And guess what the actual day of Passover is? My birthday.
Yep.
No kidding. So you're the Antichrist.
Well, John's always had a joke going back where he was like saying when it comes to the end of the world, he used to have a comic strip he drew. And it was saying, give John the bomb. I don't know if you remember when we used to say that as a joke. That's what that was alluring to. Well, now, lo and behold, it's all happening on his birthday this time. And
I think it's great that there's like a secret organization, like an elite level of rabbis who are just out searching for cows. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And from it looks like they came from Texas of all places.
Yeah, which that I don't understand when it comes to their scripture that, they always talk about America being the new Babylon. How could this sacred cow come from America if it's supposed we're the new Babylon? That's something I didn't understand about this, but I'm not.
That's easy, Dan. God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
So, and like we're all, this is all just hypothetical. We don't really have a stance on this show on any of this. This is just fun, all in good fun. But the amount of things, the amount of things that are written 2,000 years ago in this book that have actually happened it is a little bit, it is a little scary because they were like, okay, so first there's going to be this sickness that goes around, which we're not going to mention, because God, that'll shut us right down. But it happened.
It runs regardless. With Brovid.
Yeah. They said that the Euphrates River was going to dry up, and it did. They said that there was going to be a river to burst out of the middle of the desert, and it did.
Yeah.
And then, they said there was going to be this plague of locusts, and it just so happens to be that the 13 and the 17-year-old cicadas are going to come out at the same time. And they're saying that it's going to be like a biblical level of just destruction that these little creatures are going to cause.
And they said there was going to be a solar eclipse, and then 7 years later, another one. And like the last time we had a solar eclipse across America was 7 years ago. And what's crazy, the last solar eclipse, there was it 7 towns that were named Salem, which I guess is a Hebrew word. And then this next eclipse is going to have 7 towns of another Hebrew word that has to do with ending and end times and stuff. And they both cross and meet over a town called Rapture, Kentucky, or something like that.
That sounds so fucking made up, man. But we have a town called Lizard Lick, North Carolina, man. So.
Yeah. And even still, let's say that all this is hocus pocus. There's so many people with power in this world that believe in this stuff that they're going to set this forth anyways. And I mean, like, we just sent more weapons to Israel. Regardless, we're proving that we're not trying to have a ceasefire. It's only going to get worse from here from a military standpoint. Like, we're just going to keep making the people fighting against the Israelites matter at us. And it's just going to make things get worse and worse.
Well, I mean, for years, CERN have been like trying to create miniature black holes in the middle of, people are just self-destructive.
And I mean, like, if you take it from a scientific standpoint, like they talk about how we've run into these interdimensional beings, and a lot of people are like saying, well, this is a lot similar to what they describe as demons and things like that. They're coming around with the whole simulation theory that it's like, it's kind of like too perfect for the Big Bang. Perhaps something created this that we live in, but it couldn't be a God, but it's a simulation and something could have created it, but it's not God. but like something created this. And I mean, regardless, I mean, I don't know how I feel about all of it, but I have my eyebrow raised at it. Like, I'm like, okay, this is kind of crazy. And then, like, it just to me now, with as crazy as my life has been, it would make sense that they're going to end the world over a red cow.
Yeah.
It's probably the most logical thing to happen
At this point in time. I mean, you've got all these people these celebrities that worship Baphomet, regardless if they believe in it or not, they worship it. A lot of these are coming out to be secret pedophiles and stuff like that. People in control of the world, like, this is established now. We know this now, that these people with power are pedophiles. There's no allegedly about that anymore. So.
Well, I know that I was raised in a Jehovah's Witness church.
Yeah.
And that is a...
Dear God, no wonder you don't believe in any of this stuff.
I don't believe in any of this stuff, man. In fact, I think it's more detrimental to the world than it is
I always
beneficial at this
wondered
point.
what your diversion or your aversion was to religion, and now I get it, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, dude.
Jehovah's Witness, that's a tough one.
What was that?
I said Jehovah's Witness, that's a tough one. I've not.
Yeah, well, I mean, so they predicted the world was going to end a lot.
Oh yeah,
a lot. In fact, I mean, it's more than I know. Like I have a project on the back burner that I've been working on. Just I can't focus on it right now. Just a kind of a write up of the amount of times they've been wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's like 1877, 1914, 1917, 1925, 1942, 1957. Like,
yeah,
they eventually got to the point where it's like people were leaving the church in such waves that they just had to stop predicting the end of the world.
Well, not to mention, that's a tough one to believe anyways, because they think that only 144,000 people are going to go to heaven. And so what's the point of continuing to believe in it? Because there's no way you could be better than the people that were before you.
I have a theory that back then, 144,000 was just their representation of a big number because they couldn't count very good. Just like,
well, I mean,
yeah.
The founder of the church, I mean, he was just a dude who, like, he was a book salesman. And he got, I think he genuinely believed his interpretation of the Bible.
Well, I mean, his first one, and then he put it in the hat and had to do it again.
Well, that was the Mormons.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, and so my understanding of the Bible is that their New World Testament is they spent the witnesses anyway, spent years deciphering and translating the Bible, and a lot of it's transcribed in a way that fits their beliefs.
Yeah.
All of it is.
So, I mean, the Catholics didn't even let their people read the Bible until fucking King James came out and gave everyone his version of the Bible. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't. I mean, if anyone's right, it's got to be the Jewish religion, right?
China right now in modern day is editing the Bible that they'll allow their citizens to have because of the women's rights that are expressed in the Bible doesn't align with their beliefs as a nation. So they're editing it to say that to say something completely different.
Does the Bible talk about
which nation that was?
About women being equal?
I didn't even know the Bible talked about that. I always thought
something like that. We'll have to do a little bit more research into it, but yeah, I was reading about it the other day.
Well, I know, like, there was a European company that was their entire thing was they were giving out slave Bibles.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was they cut out all the parts about
equality,
the uprising. Yeah, because I mean the Bible's whole thing is about Jewish people uprising against their oppressors. You know what I mean? You can't be letting slaves read that part of the Bible. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's just I've always looked at it as even from a young age, I've looked at it as a way to control people.
Well, look at what the Catholics have done for so long. And I mean, like, it's money making. And there's a lot of those religions, especially like Seventh-day Adventists, that make you give 10% of your
the tithing side of it all. And the
ridiculous.
the more you can kind of compartmentalize into like these subsects or denominations, whatever, like, dude, they get real contentious. There's a lot of people like me out there who were raised in a church, not exclusively Jehovah's Witnesses, although
Right.
we tend to be one of the larger organizations for whatever reason,
Yeah.
that are like, dude, what the fuck? Because like I know like one of the people that I looked up to when I was a kid, and I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, but he was one of the elders of the church, and he was around. His daughter got pregnant, and they disfellowshipped her. They kicked her out of the church.
Oh, yeah.
He was married. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, she's 17. She needs her fucking dad. Like, how is that? How is that like, okay, this is you need to be a good person and you need to be ideal. How do you wrap your head around?
My father
Like,
does that kind of stuff because of his religion. I mean, like, he is okay with either one of us dying on the streets of homelessness, but he will go and he'll cook thousands of dollars worth of food for his church for people that are needy and stuff. But it has to be, you have to go to his church and you have to show faith and stuff for him to be willing to help. But his own bloodline doesn't care. Doesn't care.
He went to Detroit to tell people my recovery story.
Yeah.
Instead of asking me to tag along. He was like, "Can I tell people your recovery story?" I was like, "Well, I can go and do it." No. It's okay if I just tell them.
Well, he doesn't like the riffraff,
Yeah.
And plus, having worked, it's been most of my younger days working in restaurants. I know what it's like to work on a Sunday afternoon after church lets out. And man, those church people are so nice.
And that's really, yeah.
But I mean, as brilliant as my dad could be, I remember we were talking about George Floyd and all that, and he was like, "Well, they're taking down our statues. We need to start taking down theirs." And I'm like, "What do you mean theirs and ours? Like, they're taking down Confederate statues. Like, what are you insinuating there?" "I'm not insinuating anything." I was like, "Did you fight in the Civil War? I didn't realize you were there."
Dude, that's such a weird hang up. I don't understand the pro Confederate stat. I don't get it.
It's about heritage and history. About losers that lost a war, that were literally like terrorists. They committed treason.
It's like displaying tattoos when you go to prison.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all it is. It's just that club.
Well, I know, I understand, this is all tied into, that particular thing anyway, is all tied into the lost cause mythology that developed after the Civil War and was, spread like racist Johnny Appleseed throughout the South. So,
Johnny Crappleseed.
Yeah, right.
And they did that too. And we're talking about they lost badly. And then the Union was kind enough to be like, "We will pardon all of you. You just have to say that you will never rise up again and you will follow the rules. That's all you got to do." But it wasn't all the Southerners that were like that either. It's mostly the rich landowner, like the slave owner ones, that kind of pushed that narrative. And like you said earlier, back in the day, they could control people because they weren't giving them books to read. So people couldn't. That's one thing I'll say about what we have right now in our world. We have a whole generation, like millennials and younger, of people that can think critically because we were given information and we were able to choose ourselves. They try to censor it now, but the cat's out of the bag now.
Now they just try to shape it the best way they can. I mean, that's what I mean. I don't want to. I've spent a lot of time actually reading and writing and understanding some of the weird things in history, and I don't. I'm always learning something new about how things are framed and shaped.
Oh yeah.
So you're talking about an educated population is a pillar there. Well, did you know that during the 60s and early 70s when Vietnam was going on, that Ronald Reagan despised student protesters who were anti-war so much
Yep.
that it broke his mind, and he stopped funding colleges and created the student loan debt system.
Oh, wow.
So,
Lovely.
that's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
But that's a weird tangent. So how's this supposed to go down? Like, so they sacrifice the cow and like just everything blows up and
No.
God comes out of the skies and Flipper Jesus is right there. Like,
they got to build the temple, right?
And that's pretty much where it comes is in order to build their temple, they have to tear down the sacred Dome of the Rock. And that's where the war is going to pop off, if there is one, but...
Well, there's no if at this point. There's going to be a war with them no matter what. They war over everything. Like, they're like the Ireland and Northern Ireland. They are going to fight. It's going to happen.
Like the Koreas.
Yeah. Well, no, the Koreans have actually kind of behaved. They've had maybe 2 or 3 fights. I mean, there's a car bombing if, like, there's a goalie that misses the soccer ball in Ireland all the time. Like, it's ridiculous. And there's talk about that starting up again, too. Ireland.
The IRA's back in action.
Yeah. Well, there's talk about them uniting against England.
It's probably a good thing.
That. Anybody that unites against England, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
And
Such a weird country.
Then you got everything going on with France trying to just like start a war with Russia. Like, we're going to go in there. And like, it got us to the point, like, we're going to have to be like, no, you're not, France. What are you thinking?
I'm pretty sure France is just trying to distract their people because anytime a French politician farts in the wrong way, they go burn down Paris. So they got some protests going on right now.
I do think that one of the funnier things that happened, it's not really funny, but this thing with ISIS and Russia, and that happened. And then Russia set the example of, with their interrogations, quote unquote interrogations. Yeah. That was just like, that was one of, it kind of made me giggle a little bit. It's just like, okay, you fucked around and found out right there.
And that's another thing too, is you have ISIS out there. I don't know how, where, and I stand on that one, but they are throwing a wrench in everybody's plans. They're out there starting stuff between America and Russia. They're starting stuff between the Middle East. Like, they're wanting this to happen. They want all of the world to just start into World War III. And I don't get it. I will not understand that mindset. What has got you so mad that you have to destroy civilization? Man, we got YouTube. Like, we got Spotify. We got where music's free. They set everything free. Things are kind of good out there, and they just want to just destroy this all.
You're looking at that through an extremely Western lens.
I know.
Like, I mean, we're talking about a country that's been fought over and abused for generations now.
ISIS isn't really based upon a country itself. They're all like an amalgamation. They're trying to create the Islamic State, which is also coincides with everything that talks about in the end times, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they it's a caliphate, right?
Yeah.
They create that. That's supposedly supposed to help bring upon the end times. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's coinciding together this time. That even if it's not true, these people that believe really hard, it's getting them all excited.
They're just war horny.
Yeah,
and they always have been.
I'm horny, baby. We got to get this while I'm itching for some dying. I got to get them missiles out there. Did you see
the Israel
embalmed that food truck?
I missed the first part of that. What?
The Israelis bombed a food truck that was trying to bring food to these poor people. They're like lost everything, and they're delivering food to help give them. Like, it says clearly on there, They used a missile that could was so precise that it went through the driver's side to kill him, but they couldn't see where it said
Food truck,
like food, like truck,
taco stand. Yeah. Oh, dude, it's real fucked up.
not involved in the war, neutral, providing help, and they bomb them. And then,
I'm not gonna pretend to understand the whole geopolitical side of all this stuff, but I mean, dude, our weapons are fucking scary.
yes,
Like that's, I mean,
well,
I hate. It's like I mean, it's
Weapon-
cool to know that we have that, and that's not even the good shit.
the weapon system that Israel used, they were like, well, to me, it's proven itself perfect because it is only ever wrong 10% of the time. So that means 1 in 10 times it is wrong and it bombs and kills the wrong people. That's not good.
Oh, dude, So actually, I got a prediction I'm gonna throw out there. Don't let me forget about that. I think that as this loops back into like AI, like that's where I mean Terminator. If that's the way the world ends, that
Yeah,
I guess I'm okay with that.
sure, I guess.
And so there's actually the new Tom Cruise movie. What the fuck is it? Mission Impossible. The Americans made an AI that got so good that it started killing everybody. And
Didn't Tom Cruise have another movie like Minority Report where like they had an AI thing that was starting to predict where people were about to commit crimes or something like that?
they were like prophets, I think. It was a bunch of dudes in a tub. It was real weird. Yeah. It's a strange fucking thing, dude.
Tom Cruise, you haven't seen him before, taking a hot bath. Gotta save the world. Gotta lather up.
Oh man, that bitch on 3rd and 5th. She's
Tom
gonna
Cruise
fucking kill
running
him.
instead of driving.
Man, so we actually, me and John and I touched on this a little bit last week about how the 20s, 30s, and 40s are like a cursed time. And if the world's going to end, it might maybe the war starts, in 2030, and then 2045. That's when the next bomb drops.
Well, there was a lot of World War II. Well, World War I was really bad, but World War II, there was a lot of evil on every side that got released. I mean, nobody really has clean hands in that one. Like we do whitewash our part of it because we did win the war, but like we did some really heinous stuff too, like saving people's parts of their bodies and stuff as trophies. And Japan did some really bad stuff too. Excuse me, don't get me wrong. Like Germany was really bad. Russia was doing it to their own people. Like, oh, you killed all those people. Good job. Bang. I killed you too.
Yeah. I think one of the most telling things about American history is that while the Nuremberg trials were going on, American scientists were scrambling to delete their research because it was violated. They're like, if they're hanging the Nuremberg guys, what are they going to do to us?
Yeah. And then also, while we're hanging these people, we're also taking some of their best and brightest scientists over here to get us an advantage over the communists that we're already. What was it? Operation Paperclip?
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Ugh. The whole thing makes me shudder.
That was good stuff.
Yeah.
So you have some predictions on less depressing. You have some new theories on Kurt Cobain. Is that right, Dan?
Oh, well, it's been 30 years since we lost our generation's hero. And I mean, I've been looking into it extensively. There's a lot of information. If there's one person that's where I got a lot of my information from, I need to give credit to, and people should check out because he's dedicated a whole channel to it. American Spy Fox on YouTube. He has covered this extensively, and everybody gives him credit where credit's due, and I'm going to do the same. But Yeah, I've done it, and everybody really should look into this deeper because Kurt deserves it because he wasn't depressed and suicidal. There's a lot more to that story, and there's like the truth does deserve to be getting out there. I don't know if it ever will legally, but it wasn't just a case of him committing suicide. He was actually, from what everybody that was talking to him at that time, he was in good mental health. At the very least, I think he was murdered or something accidental happened, which we'll get into that. But suicide, I really highly, highly doubt at this point was the way that he was taken out.
He had just had a baby. You know what I mean? That he loved very, very much.
He was planning a fishing trip with his grandfather. Really, he was quitting the music industry, and there was a lot of people that had their hands in his pies that were afraid of losing everything. And
there's always been this thing that floats around. It's called the death clause. Are you familiar with it, Richard?
You know, we talked about it when we did our music episode, I don't know, several weeks ago, but I don't know it off the top of my head. How about you tell everybody just so we're all on the same page?
The theory goes that when there is a drastic shift, either a musician is looking to start doing their own thing or they try to buy up all their masters. In the case of Michael Jackson, he bought 51% of Sony. And he bought all the Beatles. Prince was another person. He didn't need a recording studio anymore because he had his own studio. So
he was keeping his masters in a vault, which to this day he still has in a vault and he will not release, or his estate will not. And there's even more to it, that pretty much when you reach a point where you're not profitable to them alive more than you are dead, they start taking you out.
And whenever an artist dies, what happens? Their music skyrockets and they make billions and billions and billions of dollars, and, resales. People, that hear, oh, this person died. Well, let me check out their music.
Look at Bradley Noel. That is one of the saddest. As much as I'm burnt out on Sublime, it's a really heartbreaking story. Like, in everybody it's a shame that there's so many people that like at frat dudes and stuff like that. They're like, yo, let's put on some grime and drink, man. He was all about drinking. And they don't actually look into his artist side. They just take him at face value. It's a shame. Because like, if you actually look at his lyrics, that was a man that was heartbroken and he was deep, regardless of like how you feel about reggae. I don't like reggae music, but I do respect and appreciate what he did.
And I mean, what other band survived that was in the middle of the LA riots? Not only did he participate in the LA riots, but he also got the guitar that made him famous in it.
He was another guy that just wanted a family and the regular life, and his wife was cheating and stuff, although I think he was cheating too.
Oh, yeah.
Badly.
Oh, for sure, dude.
He was struggling with addiction. And I mean, even the way he died, he was just lonely. I don't think he committed suicide, but I think he was depressed and didn't care what happened to him. Opposite of what happened with Kurt. So, but anyways, the death clause. There's some other artists that reached basically the limits of what their voice could do and either wanted to get out of it, or the record label's like, okay, well, he's no longer profitable. We're not going to get any new music from him or her. So they take them out. And some people, I am one of them, believe that they make it look like these suicides and stuff like that.
It's always a suicide.
They always get choked in some kind of odd way. And there's always marks on them that look more than just a suicide, or it's an impossible suicide.
Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell. I mean, just the list.
I forgot about Chris Cornell.
Yeah. I mean, even Prince.
Jimi Hendrix, they have questions about what happened to him.
Prince is buying Vicodins for the better. Every picture that there has ever been of Prince, look how tiny his pupils are. He's been on Vicodins most of his life.
Tom
And
Petty.
then he gets on the airplane that, Juice World.
Yeah. Some of these people,
I don't know who the fuck Juice World is.
he was a rapper that was going to start talking. That's another thing, too. It's getting real bad in the rap community of these guys that are going to start speaking out about some of the heinous things that are going on, which now we're starting to see the light come out on it. You're starting to see, like, what happened with Diddy. Like, and Cat Williams predicted it, man.
Yeah. Kobe
Pat
Bryant.
Williams wasn't the only one who predicted that.
Yeah.
That's one of those open secrets. I mean, going back to Courtney Love, there was an interview where she said, "Do you have any advice for upcoming stars? If Harvey Weinstein invites you to his room, don't go."
I really don't think she would have cared either way about Harvey Weinstein. I mean,
Well, it's still something that she said. Like, that's an open secret. Like, people
but
just
she's
know.
responsible for so many people's murders as it is.
One of the greatest things about Harvey Weinstein that I ever found out is David Lynch's Mulholland Drive was exposing him, but he did it in such a secret and clever way that you have to watch the movie a certain way to understand it.
I got you. I'll have to check. I've never seen it.
Oh, it's a good movie.
Is
It's a really good movie.
I hated Blue Velvet. I mean, I thought it was funny. Blue Velvet has some funny parts, but
Right.
like, man, it's such a hard movie to watch. And Eraserhead is terrible.
I haven't seen any of those movies.
Mulholland Drive is the best one out of
I just
all.
did a quick search. I'm gonna put it on my list. I'll give it a watch.
Eraserhead is a movie that if you have to hang out with some artsy fartsy people, they're going to tell you it's like the greatest movie ever, but they're kind of dumb.
So basically, the biggest secret of that movie, or the thing that really is eyebrow raising, is the baby puppet, and people believe that it is an aborted cow.
You talking about Eraserhead?
Yeah,
Okay.
they think that it's
What
an
the
aborted
fuck?
cow fetus.
It's not the Red Heifer, is it?
There we go.
Well, the movie's black and white, so you wouldn't even know. There's a guy that has like, he looks like Dr. Frankenstein or Frankenstein, if you like young Frankenstein. He's a weird looking dude. But
Ooh,
No, it's such a
we
good
got
movie.
way far off the
Yeah.
death clause, and
I do kind of. There are a couple things you guys were cooking. I don't want to jump in too much. You know what I mean?
no,
There
it's
are a
fine.
couple of things in there that I want to say. So Sublime, talking about his lyrics, like, so there's I'm funky, not a junkie, but I know where to get it.
yeah,
It was a lyric set in one of his earlier songs, and then one of the last like albums they released was that at least when Bradley was still alive anyway, was their acoustic set where he put out Pool Shark, which was
yeah.
I mean that was 100% a sad man dying
Yep.
Absolutely.
because of his addiction.
Yep.
But
And there
the
you
Sublime, yeah, I mean, for those who aren't familiar, which I hope anyone listening is, they had Sublime. They put up a new lead singer named Rome, so it was Sublime with Rome for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, Bradley's son, I guess he finally came of age and he took over the reins for Sublime. So Rome's
Really?
out.
Yeah, and he sounds
So-
just like his dad. It's
Good.
beautiful.
What I love is like a lot of these people that started to stand up against the music industry, because they'll take these hurt people like Lane Staley, and they'll just chew them up and spit them out. And like people that had kids like Frank Zappa did not want any of his kids following into the music industry like he did, other than his son Dweezil that does like live performances and stuff. That's it. But like,
Great children's names, by the way.
Yeah,
Frank
yeah.
Zappa. I think it's one of it's like Moon Captain or something like that.
Moon Unit.
Moon Unit.
He actually, Frank Zappa's only #1 hit was a song he made with her when she was making fun of all the teenage girls she was going to high school with. It's a good song. It's called Valley Girl. She became a writer, and what's crazy about her is she wrote a book kind of like talking about the truths about America, and she released it on 9/11, which was always kind of interesting.
Talk about great timing. Yeah, they're Maryland people. Hats off to them. So one of my favorite Frank Zappa fact is his instrumental album received a parental warning advisory.
I know, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a fun one. You know, back when
Those
I-
song
I-
titles are just disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
what was that?
the song titles of that album.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they were beautiful pieces of music. He wasn't just a guitar player either. He created all of the parts, all the orchestra parts, everybody that was created in his mind, and he just had them play it out. But same with Kurt, man. Everything was done like he created all of that. That's something else I didn't know about like until I started doing my research. So Kurt is commonly a misconception about him is that Courtney puts out there, by the way, and I'll get to that, is that he had this horrible upbringing in childhood and it made him a troubled youth. Really, he had a good childhood. He was a very happy child. And his parents did get a divorce and it did lead to some animosity, but he didn't have like this family that ruined him and stuff like that. And another misconception they have with him is oh shoot, it just slipped out of my mind. John, you want to throw some in there?
All right, let's see. God, that he was miserable in general. He wasn't miserable. He was one of the funniest guys. You know, he was moody. Don't get me wrong. Like,
I'm moody.
Yeah.
You see, I always kind of obviously just bits and pieces of her. I followed Dave Grohl for such a long time, listened to a lot of stuff he would put out. When he would talk about Kurt, he would say that he felt like him becoming a popular, like the level of popularity that they achieved really fucked with his head.
That part, yeah.
That did.
So
him and Dave weren't the very best of friends either. That's a misconception too.
No, he's relatively new to the band. I mean, they had just fired their drummer.
8th or 9th drummer at that point in time, but like they did meet before and it was hit and miss. So like the first thing, like before they became bandmates, they were at a concert and there was a girl on stage that was like doing a solo performance, and Dave Grohl had just moved to Seattle from Virginia or something like that. And when the girl's on stage, he was like, this girl is not talented at all. She's just like, boy hurts me. Boy makes me upset. Need new boy. And Kurt turns to him and is like, that's my girlfriend you're talking about. And Kurt didn't like Dave because Dave played in these metal bands and he was kind of a jock like before. And another thing people don't know is Dave he tried out for GWAR.
Well, Dave I mean, hats off to him because he really was in tune with a lot of the music that was going on back then. You hear him talk about some of the old punk rock scenes and shit. And it's like, dude, like fucking good for you, man.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think in another universe he could have been a drummer in GWAR. But he did learn that when it came to the business of Nirvana to keep his mouth shut because Chad Channing, I think it was, he kind of one day was like with Kurt, like, hey, it's not really fair. You're doing all the songwriting. I got some ideas. How about, we would try some of mine? And Kurt was like, how about you're fired? You know me and John. Me and John have had the hardest time dealing with drummers ourselves. You remember that one time you had that one guy come over and the first thing he said to us is like, you see, you guys are good and all, but when he's playing, man, you got to fill his holes while he's playing, bro. You got to fill them holes. And then,
dude,
like, dude, we need to fire that guy. And then he's like, hey, I can hear you guys. It's like, good.
You brought up so I know one person who was a drummer, and you brought up a second person, and oh, dude, I honestly have no idea who the fuck you're talking about.
That's the same guy that I was talking about, like the fill your holes guy. But you had another friend come over that was a drummer, and he was really good. And then he got deployed, and we never saw him again.
Yeah, that's cool. Part of the problem of living like the nomadic friend life that I've lived is like, man, like there are some people I honestly just have no fucking idea who they are.
Yeah,
but I've hung out in so many different circles that it's incredible.
Social chameleon, that's what I call it.
It's hard to find a good drummer that's talented and not a turd douche at the same time. It's hard for drummers. And then like I knew a guy that was a really cool guy, but he couldn't play the top drums and the bass drum at the same time. And I can kind of do it. I can kind of play the drums, but I can't play the drums and play the guitar and sing at the same time. That's impossible. At that point in time, why even have a band, you know?
It's only impossible because you say it's impossible, Dan.
I have a theory of why they're such douchebags, and that's because think about where these guys learned how to drum in the first place, and that's marching band.
Right? Well,
I could see that, yeah.
And look at what Dave's done with the Foo Fighters since then. I do like some of their songs, but they are definitely targeted to frat guys and bro rock. They're basically like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but a little cooler.
You can understand 75% of their words.
Yeah. But I mean, like all the people that have all been about loving the Foo Fighters have always been my bro friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely an element of that in there. I know one of their songs that it's Something from Nothing.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fucking badass song. That's my motivation song. Whenever I'm feeling a little down, I put that one on.
I like some of their earlier stuff, especially the songs that he made about hating Courtney Love. That's another thing too, is Courtney Love has inspired a lot of people to hate her.
Such a great thing with the last name of Love too, you know?
Yeah, right.
Now I will say, so I saw an interview with Dave Grohl on the Kelly Clarkson show, where Kelly's like, she goes into this. That's the American Idol chick.
I know.
She goes into this like, she's breaking down one of his songs. I don't even remember which one it is. I Learned to Fly.
Yeah.
And she's like, this lyric and this lyric. I mean, they're so beautiful and they're wordy and they're good. They're great together and they say this message. What was going through your mind when you wrote that song? He just said, "Oh, I was in flight school." I was like,
so matter of factly,
what the fuck?
I was learning to fly.
You're just really good at writing songs. You don't actually give a shit about what's in them. That's great, dude. Like that's a hell of a skill.
That's another thing, another misconception. Now I remember now. A lot of people are like, well, look at lyrics that Kurt was writing. He was so miserable. He was so terrible. A lot of his lyrics were just words that he was saying. He'll even say that, like, you guys don't need to take my music so seriously. Like, a lot of times it's just words that I've put together that I thought sounded cool. And they, like, it's just like they did with the Beatles, where, like, they tried to, like, deconstruct everything that he did. And that's where I'm the Walrus came from. Was John Lennon was like, okay, well then since you think you know what I think and stuff like that, how about this? Now there were like Courtney Love was making him miserable at that point in time. Everybody talks about how like when they would enter a room, she would be so dramatic and she always made herself the center of attention. And she dated, her dream in life, this is according to her father, was she wanted to meet rock stars and she wanted to kill them. Now, her dad said this. He said that she used to walk around and say, I'm going to kill me a rock star. Granted, he's saying that while he's trying to hot books that he'd written like Courtney assassinated Kurt or something like that. But he also has these other books that he's written, surprisingly, that he needs to, when he's getting interviewed about all this, that's about his Grateful Dead and all this stuff. He's selling all this, by the way, to go along with his theory about what his daughter was planning on doing. So it kind of got to take what he says with a grain of salt. But I mean, she dated Billy Corgan and she dated Twiggy from Marilyn Manson. And there's a lot of people that think that she actually didn't have any talent. And a lot of these boyfriends wrote the songs for her. Now, I do know Kurt wrote a lot and Billy Corgan wrote a lot of her songs.
Billy Corgan, man, you know, that's a dude that can write a fucking song.
Yeah.
There are several really good Smashing Pumpkin songs that are out there.
Like, she had people on the payroll that when you start looking into the investigation, like, so the Seattle Police Department, they went in there and they're like, oh, well, this looks like a suicide to me. There's no reason to do any more investigation. Let's seal it up. Don't worry about the evidence and stuff like that. So it turns out that she had friends that worked for the Seattle Police Department. Like, one of them was a detective in narcotics that when she would get mad at people in Seattle, she would just turn in for their drug dealing and stuff like that. And
What a bitch, dude.
he was involved in the investigation of Kurt's suicide. And on top of that, the guy that did the autopsy was a friend of hers that went back, like when she lived in California or something like that. And it's the only autopsy he ever did was Kurt Cobain's. And then he retired from doing autopsies and moved to Florida on the other side of the country. I don't understand why people don't find that kind of suspicious. Was a friend of Courtney's, and then that's all he did, and then he moved across country to get away. Trent Reznor was so afraid of her because she had a little thing that she liked to do where she would make little gifts and stuff like that and put them in heart-shaped boxes and give them to whoever she had a crush on. And she started doing that to Trent Reznor. He had 2 bodyguards come with him, go to her trailer, and was like, "Stop sending me stuff, you crazy psychopathic murderer." So
what band was Trent Reznor in?
9 Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails. Okay.
Technically, that's not a band. He makes all the music himself, and he hires people because he's kind of known for being a little bit of a dickhead too. Like the band Filter happened because he wouldn't pay the artists in his band properly. And Richard Patrick, who's the brother of the guy that played T-1000, by the way, he was like, "Hey man, you got all this money and stuff, and I can't afford to live. Like, can you help out?" And he was like, "Well, Richard, if you need money so bad, you can go deliver pizzas for Domino's. But seriously, go start a band if you want to make money." And so he started Filter.
And it's rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some interesting. I don't know. I just hearing. I don't think I've ever heard anything good about Courtney Love. And the only time I've ever seen her was one of those it was really shitty Comedy Central roast.
Yeah.
And she was just she was so shithoused.
Yeah.
That it was depressing.
Well, the private investigator that she hired to find it, because Kurt was going to rehab. He went to Exodus, and she tries to make this story that he jumped the fence and left, and went on the run. But he'd already been to this rehab before, and you could leave anytime you wanted. And the last time he was there, he just walked out and left. So that's another misconception that they make out there, is that he hopped the fence and left. He didn't want to go there. That is true. Because
there aren't very many rehabs that are lock you down.
No.
I mean, it's
not.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go to begin with, because his bass player, Chris, drove him, and he didn't want to go and kept arguing with him. And eventually he finally did go. But he left on his own volition. But she hires a private investigator to try to find out where he was. And in the meantime, she made him so alarmed that he started recording all the phone conversations with her, because she was asking questions like, apparently there was a prenuptial agreement with Courtney and Kurt that when they got together, she already had a trust fund. She had a lot of money to begin with. Kurt didn't have money, so she didn't want him to have the ability to get it. So they had a prenuptial agreement. She was trying to talk to him like, "Hey, I need you to find Kurt, but we can't call the police and stuff." And he's like, "Well, if he's missing, wouldn't you want to call the police?" "No, we can't really do it that way. By the way, can we find a way to get out of my prenuptial agreement if something happens to him?" Well,
lifestyles of the rich and the famous, man.
Yeah, it's why do you think something happened to him? I'm just saying, it's not fair. And so he starts recording the conversations with her, and she's trying to say that she thinks that he's having an affair with her bass player named Kristen Paff. Crazy funny thing that happens to Kristen Paff shortly after Kurt Cobain dies, she dies too. And it was a girl that Courtney was jealous of because she was an actual trained musician. And she's thinking Kurt died. I mean, like Kurt was having an affair with her. And then this girl, Kristen, goes back to get her stuff because she was going to leave Seattle. She was leaving Hull. And the weekend she went to get her stuff, she died of an overdose after meeting with Courtney Love. And to rewind a little bit, Kurt supposedly had a suicide attempt when he was in Rome. Nobody around him at the time, including the doctor, was calling it a suicide attempt. That was made up by Courtney Love, and she changed it. The doctor even said that it didn't seem like there was enough drugs in his system to try to kill himself. She made that up with the private investigator whenever they're doing this new search for him.
To put the narrative out there.
Yeah. Almost like she's trying to build a story for that. So to keep up with this, she's got a private investigator that she's asking about how she can get out of a prenuptial agreement if something happens to him. She has people that's working for the Seattle Police Department that do the investigation, that go ahead and call it a suicide without doing a proper investigation. And the guy that does the autopsy of Kurt was a friend of hers, and the only autopsy he did was of Kurt after retiring. He also worked in the music industry before. That's how he met Courtney Love. I forgot that part.
You never heard the saying, like, you know, the easiest way to get away with murder is to kill a junkie?
So that's what they think.
I mean, that's pretty. I mean, that's
with the first
got to be true. I mean, that's how a lot of serial killers operate.
That's why, like, a lot of people think, because when everybody saw Kurt in town, they said he was kind of sick looking, almost as if like he was going through withdrawal symptoms. And then with his death, they said that he shot up 3 times the lethal amount. And then they're trying to say that he killed himself. Well, with that Kristen girl, when she went back after not doing drugs or anything, when she went back to Seattle, what do you know? She meets with Courtney Love and she overdoses on like several times the lethal dose after not doing it for a while. And there's just a lot that follows Courtney Love. And the fact that like her dad is going out and saying that she used to talk about how she was going to get involved with all these artists and she had a goal of killing them. And after Kurt died, she was releasing Hole's album. Everybody was asking her to put it on hold. It's just the right thing to do. And she didn't. And the album name was called Live Through This. This is an album she'd been working on before it was even considered him dying. And she's going to call it Live Through This. Like, there's so much. And that's just like, that's not even getting into like the fact that he tried to kill himself with a gun that was loaded with ammunition that there's a good chance you're going to survive even at point blank range.
Okay. So you ever heard the old saying, you know, you load your gun up, it's birdshot, buckshot, buckshot. No, wait. Birdshot, buckshot, birdshot, buckshot. And the whole thing is like the first shot you want to pepper them, be like, okay, dude, I'm serious. You know what I'm saying? Then it's buckshot after that. If they're going to still come at you after you hit them with the pepper, then, you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to put them down. Then if somebody else is there, you hit them with the bird shot. You know what I'm saying? And if they're still coming at you, it's like, okay, I'm going to put both of you down. Buckshot.
When Dick Cheney was bird hunting and he shot that guy in the face at point blank, the guy survived because it was birdshot. And that was a 12-gauge shotgun. Kurt Cobain had a 20-gauge, which is significantly weaker. I had a 20-gauge shotgun. Like, if he was going to kill himself, why would he do it with something? He was an avid gun user. There's interviews where he talks about how guns are not to be glamorous. They're not cool. They're a tool to use. And he wasn't a member of the NRA, but he was a responsible gun owner because he liked shooting. He was like, guns are fun. I like guns. I like shooting at targets, and it just feels really cool. and I use them to protect my family. Now, Kurt in their house, he didn't have security guards. He wasn't like that. Was one of the big fights he had with Axl Rose. Is Axl Rose constantly had like security guards around him. His house wasn't guarded. He didn't have a gate or anything like that around. It was just his house that he was in like this big fancy neighborhood, and he already had people trying to break into his house, like crazy fans. He was very familiar with what happened to John Lennon. So whenever he escaped Exodus, he was getting threatening calls from Courtney Love because they were already going to get divorced. It was already known that she was cheating, and she had two people that were a live-in nanny that were staying there constantly watching Francis. One of them was a 15-year-old girl, by the way. This 15-year-old girl was writing a magazine. They called them zines at the time. And part of her thing was she was doing stories to kind of help Courtney's, kind of help her with her business and stuff like that. She's also who wrote a lot about Courtney after this happened, where, you know, Courtney got clean and kind of helped rebuild her career and stuff like that. She was at the house, and there were calls given to like Kurt constantly, or trying to find Kurt, and like she was threatening him, telling him he wasn't going to get to see his daughter, and she was going to go after him and ruin him with the divorce and things like that.
Yeah, so I just can't get over like how shitty she is, but how relatable everything you're saying is to someone that I know. And I think we all know somebody who's that awful.
Yeah.
Is that person. Like, you know, like that person's going, like that woman, or in some cases that dude, is going to have more than one marriage. And you know that person's going to be the worst fucking mother-in-law on the planet.
Well, she was threatening him because she wanted him to headline Lollapalooza that year. He was going to get offered, I think it was like $9 million. And Kurt was like, no, I'm done. Like, touring is killing me. I want to be a dad. I want to be at home. I want to focus on art.
We're rich enough.
I'm tired of the music industry. And she's like, you have to do it. Don't drop out now. Don't be a pussy. Like calling him names and stuff and threatening him because he didn't want to do it. That's the thing about the letter that he left. If you read it, the majority of it was him saying, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. That's another thing too that makes me mad. When she was meeting with her lawyer found pieces of paper where she was practicing Kurt's handwriting. And everybody has said that the last lines where it gets into what sounds like suicide looks like someone else had written it. So
it's an interesting detail to sprinkle in there. I've never actually seen it or read it. I've always, that's always, the suicide's always been depressing as fuck to me. I mean, I know a couple people who have done it, and it's like, it makes me emotional. Like, I can't get through it. And that's, part of what you're saying earlier about how he was a happy person. I don't think he did it. I mean,
say, Richard, sorry.
I'm sorry. The suicide part's always been, I know, unfortunately, I think like anyone my age, especially veterans, we know people who have done it before, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's hard to say. It's such a tricky topic because I know my most recent friend who, unfortunately passed away. Yeah, it was less than a year ago. I had a conversation with him like 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And everything seemed like it was okay. Seemed like he was a great guy. And I could say the same thing about two other people. You just don't know. You just don't know what's going through someone's head. And of course, I don't want to compare somebody who's a rock star to a fucking veteran. You know what I mean? It's two very different lives, but still, you just don't know what's going on in someone's head.
I get that, but in this particular case, when it comes to Kurt, I just, there's too much that points, like, I feel this inside of me that, like, something's not right about this. He had too much.
The Courtney Love aspect of this makes it, I mean, that's a very compelling argument. And you're absolutely right. It should have a second look. Well, I guess in this case, probably a fifth look.
Well, they destroyed all the evidence. That's the thing, is she had the police that was doing the investigation was like, well, there's no point in even worrying about doing an investigation properly. We're deciding it's a suicide. They never do that. That's never done. Like,
They did that to Leo Schofield, actually. After his case was over, even though it was an appeals process, they destroyed like most of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's not even getting into the whole like forensics about the way the gun wouldn't have been able to fire properly. And like, he was in the greenhouse, and she told, like, nobody looked in the greenhouse. And there's another thing about, like, there was another guy that was there. Like, so there was a 15-year-old girl that talked to Kurt, and, you know, they're trying to say that he needs to call Courtney. Well, when he's trying to call Courtney, Courtney has it set to where she can't receive phone calls. If she's telling everybody that Kurt needs to get a hold of her, why would she have it set to where she can't get any phone calls if she's that worried about finding him? You know, that's a little fishy too. But there's another guy there so the private investigator, he got thrown off by the way that Courtney was talking, started recording her phone calls. He went to the house himself and saw there was another guy there, the live-in nanny and stuff like that. That guy had left a note talking, like, the way it was written, it seemed fishy to the investigator that he already knew that Kurt was dead, just the way that it was written. And the investigator went there. Nobody's looking at the greenhouse, by the way. It's a big part of the house. They all keep missing it. Courtney gets her ex that was in her band. I don't know how familiar you are with Hole, but there's a guy in the band that looks like a woman. I thought it was a woman for a long time.
I'm not familiar with that band at all.
Well,
I think I heard one of their songs and I just turned it off.
Yeah, well, she was a talentless hack, but he was still in love with Courtney. He went to go check on Kurt to see if he was there, which I've got my suspicions about him too. I'll get into my theories here in a little bit. He was there. He didn't check the greenhouse. Nobody checks the greenhouse, which is where Kurt was found. And everybody's like, oh, well, it's kind of hard to see in the dark. Well, there's people there during the daytime. Like, why are they not looking at the greenhouse? If you're looking for somebody, aren't you going to look at every single place possible? Why would you keep overlooking this one room? And Courtney was telling people, I think she told some people not to look in there. Like, oh, there's no point. He's going to be somewhere else.
And it's his hangout place where all his stuff is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you're doing searches like that, of course, you're trained to do it a certain way, but obviously not everyone follows the training. Anytime you're going through a house, you start on the right-hand or left-hand side, and you just follow the left-hand wall or the right-hand wall all the way around until you get back to your starting spot.
Yeah. Now, to kind of push things along a little bit, did you ever watch Soaked in Bleach, the documentary?
I don't think I finished it. I think I probably got 5 minutes in and something happened because I know it's in the back of my head. Maybe I watched it, maybe I didn't. It's been some time.
So just for time purposes, like I said, there's a lot to it that should really, like, everyone should, like, get a chance to look into. Check out American Spy Fox's YouTube channel. Did a lot of work on this. But
I'll make sure I add a link at the bottom of the show notes.
So there's a guy that was in a band, El Duce is his name, who on the documentary Soaked in Bleach talks about how Courtney Love offered him before, like during that first suicide attempt, she offered him $50,000 to kill Kurt Cobain. And he was like, how are you suggesting that I do this? And she was like, make it look like he overdosed. Shoot him in the head. We got a gun at the house. And that's another thing, is because of that first time, Kurt's guns got confiscated. So the gun that he died with, his friend bought. And his friend was like, he was completely fine. He wanted to buy it because he was worried about his house getting broken into. I wouldn't have bought it for him if I thought he was suicidal. But this guy was offered by Courtney to kill Kurt for $50,000. That in itself is a crime. Like offering to kill somebody like that.
Also, that's nowhere near enough money to kill one of the most famous people in the world.
Well, even still, the guy was like, man, I should have done it. A day after he started talking about how like Courtney offered him that money, he was found dead on the train tracks with his head removed.
it just happened to lose it.
They tried to say that he walked out in front of a train and committed suicide. He walked out and got his head taken off by the train.
This lady's got more suicides to her name than fucking the Clintons.
Well, that's like with Kristen Paff. She comes back. She's quitting Hole. She's got her life back on track. She's grabbing her stuff. Courtney stops by. She's dead. And Courtney thought that she was sleeping with Kurt. So, I don't know.
Just going around chopping motherfuckers' heads off, dude.
Yeah. And so I brought all that up because, so here's my theories. So obviously the first one I have is Courtney is involved. Courtney had him killed by somebody that was there at that house, or even a possible hit. And I think that they tried to either overdose him at first, and then that wasn't working, so they shot him. Or that guy that was in her band that was still in love with Courtney, I think Kurt maybe was getting high and then shot him. Maybe that dude that left that note that was like, I can't believe you were in the house without me seeing you, Kurt. Maybe that guy shot him. I don't know. But they said that everybody tried to make it out that it was a gruesome scene, that his head was unrecognizable. They had an open casket funeral. That's how okay he looked.
Well, I think the gruesome scene, unrecognizable, I think that's more sensationalism than anything else.
No, that was details that were not those were released at first.
Oh, really? So that's not just like headlines. That's like one of the cops wrote it down.
That was part of the details at first.
Okay.
That's another.
You're right. I mean, so unfortunately, I've seen a couple of dogs that have been their owners tried to put them down, and it didn't work with birdshot.
Yeah.
And granted, their skulls are different than ours.
Well,
but, I mean, it's very unlikely that he gets lucky the first time.
Something else is they're trying to say he put the gun in his mouth to their theory to try to make sense. He had a bunch of trauma to his eyes that didn't make sense. That didn't coincide with how the bullets would have went in too. That didn't make sense to them either. Also, it's fishy about the announcement of his time of death. There's a lot of people that think he actually died on the 3rd, which comes into my other theory. So the police and the investigators all were known to be trying to go around that house too to look for him. I think that it's a possibility that either the private investigator or the police did check the greenhouse. And so, a little backtrack real quick. Kurt was also Courtney tried to make this narrative that he came from a suicidal family, that he had these uncles that committed suicide. It turns out that one of them was a cop, and his gun fell out of the holster and went off and hit him. And he asked if anyone else got hit or was hurt, and then he fell over dead, so it was an accident.
God, what a shitty way to die.
The other uncle was drunk and fell down a flight of stairs and died accidentally. So my other theory was that he had an accident with his gun, if it was gun related, because he was all messed up. He broke out of rehab because he didn't want to go to rehab. He didn't want to fix that. He wanted out of the music industry. I'm wondering if somebody startled him when they were trying to get into the greenhouse, because he was already worried about people breaking in. And I wonder if he mishandled, because he was so high, his gun and shot himself on accident.
He fell victim to the Cobain curse.
Yeah.
Cobain curse.
Or,
real
quick, let me finish. Or if the police, because we hear about this happen a lot, happened to break in because he was all high. They saw him with a gun. They shot him and with a different gun, killed him. And so then they made it look like a suicide. Me and John were talking about that the other day. I was like, I'm surprised more people don't, like, they kill somebody with one gun, don't shoot them with a different gun to get away with it.
Yeah, right. That's actually that's there's a scene in my new favorite show, Resident Alien, where there's a gun swaparoo that goes on. Which, by the way, if you guys aren't watching that, you fucking need to. That's a great show.
Yeah.
It is dry, dark humor, and it's just pretty funny. But talking about giving someone heroin, man, or whatever their drug of choice is. Did you guys ever watch Sons of Anarchy?
I've watched some of it.
I'm familiar.
There's a scene where one of the main characters, there's a custody dispute, and that's how he wins custody. Just
Oh, really?
yeah, he just gives her a quick shot. So it's pretty dark, dude.
I know a friend, I'm not going to mention names, but just to talk about how dark and evil she can get sometimes. She had somebody beat her up, a guy beat her up, and then also steal some stuff from her house. And she played it off cool. She knew she couldn't go to the police or anything like that. So one day she ran into him and he was like, "Hey," and she's like, "Hey, friend, come over here, give me a hug." And while he was in the store, she'd grabbed some drugs and she threw them in his car. And as he was pulling away, she called the cops on, saying he was driving disorderly or erratically and looked like he was intoxicated, and he got busted for the drugs that she threw in his car. So be careful of people that you screw over, because you never know at what level they might take revenge.
It sounded like you said she paid him to beat her up.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, I must have just completely misheard that.
Yeah, no, I said he had beat her up and he
Okay.
stole stuff from her. She paid for drugs and got them.
Oh, okay. It was okay. It was a deal gone wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing more frightening than lazy, ambitious people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true.
So,
Man,
but
that's
to
good for
wrap up
her.
what I was saying, I mean, you hear about it all the time with cops busting into the wrong place, and then somebody trying to protect their home pulls a gun out, and then they shoot them and they get away with it. But there's no way in hell they're going to get away with killing the greatest artist of all time, at least of our generation. Like, so many people would
especially it wouldn't happen. I don't think it would happen nowadays.
Explain why they would have tried to make it look like a suicide, not even investigate it as a murder. And it would also explain why they can't catch a murderer, because they did it.
I just misspoke. I think that they could get away with it nowadays. I think that there is enough, like, I don't really know how it happened, but there's like a real hard on for fucking cops right now.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see that them doing that and getting away with it. Hell, there was just a scene where the fucking cops just shot like a 15-year-old girl. She was kidnapped, and or maybe it happened a couple years ago, and they just released the footage where they shot a kidnapped girl who was running to them for help. So, I highly doubt they got any issues, anything wrong with them. But
God, what a horrible ending to a terrible story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just like you add all that stuff up with Courtney, like the fact that she was trying to find a way to get out of the prenup that she created because she was worried about her money to get to his fortune, because she felt like, dude, she was trying to always manipulate him. She tried to turn him against the rest of his band, demanding that he was the only talented one in the band and that he should get 75% of all the royalties, and that Chris and Dave don't deserve any of it. Chris was so upset about Kurt marrying her that he refused to go to their wedding. Dave went to the wedding. Now, there's a whole Illuminati part of this that I go into too, but I'm not going to get into it. This has already gone kind of long anyway.
Yeah. Well, we discussed that in past episodes before too.
But
now, what was
you
said the name of the documentary was Soaked in Bleach?
But, well, I was going to say, like, if you do, like, to kind of hint at what I'm saying, you kind of see who's gotten famous since his death. And if like there is a thing to those ritual deaths, you can kind of see like
It always requires a sacrifice.
who may have sacrificed him for their next facet of fame and fortune, who he already had problems with. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I like the idea that there's like a Joker style character who's just walking in with a pool stick. It's just like, here you go. There's 3 of you.
I really think the last one is unlikely because that's somebody that has just time and time again lost somebody very important to them.
I'm not just saying just him. I'm saying there's several people that ritually killed him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't just be him.
Yeah, but he did get pretty famous, and I think that's really just a tribute to his
and he wasn't
ability
even
to capitalize on his talents, his work, and then using his network to get his name out there.
Yeah. But I don't believe that one. I think it was all, I'll easily say I think Courtney had something to do with it. Like the fact that she was trying to get out of that prenup, the fact she was trying to learn how to write like him, the fact that she had so many of these people in control of post-mortem. Dude, I heard stories about like there were supposed to be guys guarding his body that Courtney hired, and they supposedly like were cutting him up and dancing with him to Pearl Jam music. Like desecrating.
So depressing.
Yeah. I'm hoping that's made up. I hope
You got Jeremy going on in the background. They're slow dancing like some waltz shit.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, but like they had an open casket funeral. Like the fact that she tried to spin all these narratives about suicide beforehand and then afterwards. The fact that she didn't wait to release an album she called Live Through This that was all about her, overcoming what just happened because it's always about her. The fact that her bass player died like in a very sketchy kind of way too, and she thought that Kurt was cheating on her with her. And just there's a lot of stuff that makes it suspicious. And I feel like the police wouldn't get away with that shitty, unless they're paid off, they wouldn't get away with doing that kind of shitty of investigating, especially nowadays. Shouldn't have in the 90s, though.
Yeah. Well, it's fun stuff, man.
Yeah.
But the moral of the story is, don't be a fucking Karen. Don't murder your husband unless he deserves it. But anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Take care.